Today, on this solemnity of Corpus Christi, we're going to meditate just on one phrase in the Gospel. It's this: "And all ate and were filled. What was left over was gathered up, 12 baskets of broken pieces." So the scene is the multiplication of the loaves. Jesus feeds 5,000 plus people. He feeds them, first of all, spiritually with his word, and then he feeds them physically by multiplying the bread and the fish. And then at the very end, the scene ends with this phrase: "What was left over was gathered up, 12 baskets of broken pieces." Why is this little detail recorded? What's so important? Broken pieces, gathered up, why? Now, the first reason is it has to do with Jesus providing more than the people need and expect. So I wonder if you've ever had that happen to you, that experience. So let's say it's your birthday, and your family surprises you with a gift that's more than you ever expected. You just feel, wow, overwhelmed. Or let's say you're sick, and then someone bends over backwards and takes care of you. So they go beyond. Now, this is who Jesus is. He always gives us more than we need, more than we expect. That's the first reason. The deeper reason is this detail is recorded because it has to do with the crumbs of the Eucharist. Now, in St. John's Gospel, the same phrase is put this way. Jesus gives a command. He says, "Gather up the fragments left over so that nothing may be lost." Jesus doesn't want any of the bread to be wasted because this bread foreshadows his Eucharistic body. Have any of you ever seen the Eucharist fall to the ground during communion? Yes, so it's actually it hurts. For us Catholics, it hurts when we see the Eucharist treated casually. Have you ever felt any particles? For those of us who receive in the hand, have you ever felt particles or crumbs on your hand? Now, I recently celebrated a Mass, and I noticed this priest standing next to me. Because we were far away from the altar, we were both holding the Eucharist, and after he consumed, I saw that he discreetly checked his hands to make sure that there are no particles. I thought, wow, that's very beautiful. Deacon Andrew actually does the same thing. When we purify the sacred vessels at the altar after Holy Communion, whenever deacon sees, a visible particle of the Eucharist, he uses his finger and consumes it. I want to show you this video from 2015. It's of the future Polish president rescuing the Eucharist after the wind had blown over a host in an outside Mass. I think that's so beautiful. So he sees the Eucharist on the ground, he reacts, and no one has ever taught us, what do you do when the Eucharist falls to the ground? So he instinctively, he beautifully protects the Eucharist with his hand on top, and he doesn't know what to do with it. So his aides come to him, and they say, you should return the Eucharist to the bishop. And that's what he does. So beautiful. So every year on Corpus Christi, we thank Jesus for the gift of his body, and we always review, how can we show Jesus our love when we receive communion? Now today we have a very specific goal. Our goal today is we never want to let the Eucharist fall to the ground, not even a fragment, okay? Now the Gospel has two clear connections to the Eucharist. The first is this, it says, on their return, the apostles told Jesus all they had done. He took them with him and withdrew privately to a city called Bethsaida. When the crowds found out about it, they followed him, and he welcomed them and spoke to them about the kingdom of God and healed those who needed to be cured. What's happening here is that Jesus and the apostles need to rest. The apostles just got back from a mission, so they withdraw. They need to rest, but the crowd follows them, and Jesus, who is so full of love, he welcomes them and he takes care of them. He feeds them and then heals them. Why? Because Jesus is God and God is love and love always gives itself to the beloved. So this is what Jesus does in the Eucharist. He's giving himself to us. That's the first connection. The second, it says, and taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, he looked up to heaven and blessed and broke them and gave them to the disciples to set before the crowd. Scriptures recognize that these 4 verbs are technical verbs for the Eucharist. Take, bless, break, and give. When we see those 4 verbs together, we know it's referring to the Eucharist. Why? Because the same 4 verbs are repeated during the Last Supper, during the institution of the Eucharist. And same when Jesus reveals himself on the road to Emmaus, you have these same 4 verbs together. Now, beyond these 2 clear connections, we've also seen, as Catholics, 4 echoes of the Mass. We see it connected to the multiplication of the loaves. So here's the first one. When Jesus feeds the crowd, the first thing he does is he feeds them with his word and then physically with the bread. And that's how we do it at Mass. We first of all receive the liturgy of the word, and then we have the liturgy of the Eucharist. Second, when Jesus says to the apostles, you give them something to eat, this resembles priests feeding the people at Mass. Third, Jesus asks that the crowd sit down in groups of about 50 each. When was this gospel written? It's written at the time when Christians were celebrating Mass in a home of about 50 people. Fourth, in Eucharistic prayer number 1, the priest has to look up to heaven before he consecrates, just as it said Jesus looked up to heaven before he blessed the bread. So now let's get into the practicalities of receiving the Eucharist. I say every year, I always favor receiving communion on the tongue, not because it's holier, it's not, just because of the sign value. So we don't receive ordinary food like this. So when we receive communion directly onto the tongue, it's a reminder to us that this is something special. However, one tip, please do not receive communion like this good fellow. Do not tilt your head way back and do not stick your tongue way out. Do you know what traditional priests say about this way of reception? Don't do it. Because the Eucharist does not adhere as well to your tongue when you do that. So we should do it this way. Just look straight forward, stay still, and let the minister place the Eucharist on your tongue. As for receiving communion on the hand, one hand should be placed underneath the other. And when you receive the Eucharist, that bottom hand should come closer to the mouth as we take the Eucharist to our mouth to prevent the Eucharist from falling. So we just want to improve the way we receive on the hand. So we filmed the video. We're going to show you now 5 ways not to receive the Eucharist by hand, which happens here. So pay attention if you might do this sometimes. And then we'll show the one right way of doing it.
Grabbing instead of receiving our Lord. Juggling the Eucharist. Not protecting the Eucharist from falling with the bottom hand. One-handed. Walking away. Here, the Eucharist should be consumed while kneeling. How to receive Jesus with reverence. With one hand under the other, we create a throne for Jesus our King. We use our bottom hand to protect the fragments of the Eucharist from falling. Most importantly, we are praying in our hearts, telling Jesus that we believe He is truly present, that we love Him, and we wish to receive more grace from Him.
I'm glad you enjoyed that. And I had to do something nice for Deacon Andrew after making fun of him so many times. Now, for priests, the general instruction of the Roman Missal says this: whenever a fragment of the host adheres to his fingers, especially after the fraction or the communion of the faithful, the priest is to wipe his fingers over the paten, or if necessary, wash them. So at the altar, if I feel particles on my fingers, I just wipe them over the paten, or I have to wash them. Now that's a good reminder that if we feel any, visible fragments of the Eucharist on our hands, we consume them. Very simple. Now the most important part of receiving communion is that we believe Jesus is truly present in the Eucharist, and we love Him, and we tell Him this. So it's really important. We said this in December. Jesus wants us to receive Him. He loves us so much, He wants us to receive Him. So this is a message for those of us who rarely take Holy Communion. Now it's clear, those of us who don't take communion, we love Jesus. And we know it's better not to receive communion than to receive communion in a state of mortal sin. So if I miss Mass, Sunday Mass, through my own fault, I cannot go to communion until I go to confession. And I think a lot of us know also, if we're not baptized Catholics, we can't take Holy Communion. Now that said, now that we know, of course, it's better not to receive, we still should remember Jesus does want us to receive Him and get ourselves ready to receive Him. So imagine this. Imagine our best friend in the world comes to our house and says, "Hey, can I come in?" So who for you is your best friend in the world besides Jesus? Who are you thinking of right now? So have that person in your mind. That person loves you so much, they come to your house and they say, "Can I come in?" And we say, "I'm not ready, not today." Now that best friend would not be angry at us, but would say, "Is there anything we can do to fix this situation?" In the same way, Jesus wants to come to our body and to our soul, and for whatever reason, we say, "Jesus, not today," or "I'm not yet ready." He's not angry, but He says, "Is there anything we can do to fix the situation?" Because He wants to come in, and He wants us to get ready. We mentioned before, in 2026, we want to use that whole year to prepare to renew our commitment to adoration. So just for now, could you start thinking, would you be willing in the future to make a commitment to spending 1 hour a week in adoration? We're already looking to find 3 speakers to come in 2026, just so that we can renew our devotion to the Eucharist Adoration Chapel. And we finish now with a video about a Eucharistic miracle. And in the video, when it says that they place the Eucharist in water, that is considered a reverent way of letting the Eucharist naturally lose its properties of bread.
The Eucharistic miracle took place here in the town of Legnica, Poland, on Christmas Day in 2013. Father Andrzej Ziąbra is a witness to the miracle inside the Church of Saint Hyacinth.
Konsekrowany na ziemię podczas udzielania Komunii Świętej.
Father Andrzej says that during Christmas Mass, the consecrated host fell onto the floor. When it was carefully restored and placed in water, red stains started to appear on the host. The then Bishop of Legnica, Stefan Cichy, created a commission to monitor the host in February 2014. The Szczecin University's Department of Histopathology identified the material as myocardium, fibers of human heart muscle. Tests also showed that the fibers experienced severe stress that often appears in agony. This scientific conclusion was examined by the Vatican, and in 2016, It gave permission for the host to be exposed for veneration.
Żeby porównać, powiedzieć, czyje to jest DNA, to jednak to jeszcze wymaga dalszych badań.
Father Andrzej says there is still a long path of investigation ahead for scientists, but Legnica is attracting pilgrims from around the globe who want to witness the miracle with their own eyes. The monstrance is placed before a Divine Mercy image to remind visitors of Christ's loving heart. In Poland, Iwo Bender, EWTN News Nightly.
The Holy See is extremely reticent normally about declaring that anything is a miracle because most miracles can't be proven. Now in this case, if Jesus has given us a miracle, it's to remind us he wants to give his heart to us. He wants us to receive him. The miracle is there to remind us he is truly, really, and substantially present in the Eucharist. This is why we don't even want a fragment to fall to the ground. This is why we want nothing to be lost.